Hello, I'm Corey Hello, and welcome to another episode of Critimation, where I review animated TV shows and films. As always, I do not own any of these films or shows. They are properties of their respected owners. Welcome to part 2 of the Critimation's Western Reviews trilogy. Our first topic is An American Tale, Feivel Goes West. The film takes place 5 years after the events of the original film. At this point, the Masquerades have discovered that the American dream isn't all that it's cracked up to be. And to make matters worse, they are forced underground by a group of cats who attack the mouse community. There they meet a cowboy mouse, which is really a puppet being controlled by the cat's leader, Caterwaul, who tells them that there's a new American dream out west, thereby convincing the mice, including the Masquerades, to take a train out to a western town called Green River. After traveling for some time, Feivel discovers Caterwaul's plan to trick the mice into being their friends and then have them create a balloon, after which they would be turned into mouse burgers by a giant mouse trap. However, Feivel gets discovered and is thrown off the train by Caterwaul's assistant, Artrula the tarantula. While he survived, Feivel has to walk the rest of the way to Green River. Along the way, he gets captured by a hawk. Meanwhile, the cat that Feivel befriended in the first film, Tiger, had been following the train for some time and gets lost. Eventually, he gets captured by Native American mice and is made their god. Enough said. And it is here that these mice shoot down the hawk carrying Feivel and he is reunited with Tiger. After riding a tumbleweed the rest of the way to Green River, Feivel tries to warn his family about the cat's plan, but no one believes him. Meanwhile, Caterwaul notices Tanya singing and decides to make her a saloon girl. After some consulting from Miss Kitty, a former girlfriend of Tiger who had left to go west, Tanya becomes a hit in the saloon, and she too ignores Feivel's warnings. That night, Feivel meets an old dog who is revealed to be his idol, Wiley Burp. He offers to help Feivel out in saving the other mice in exchange for getting a dog to train as his apprentice. And since Feivel doesn't know any other dogs, he recruits Tiger instead. After a surprisingly impressive training montage, Tiger becomes a pretty believable dog. The trio arrive just in time to stop Caterwaul from cutting the ribbon that would activate the mouse trap, and a showdown begins. Eventually, Caterwaul starts using the nearby rifle as a cannon to shoot mice, but is intercepted by Feivel. However, Chula takes Miss Kitty hostage. After Tiger deals with the other cats and rescues her, Feivel uses the rifle to shoot the ribbon to the mousetrap and catapult the cats into a mailbag that is picked up by the train. With the cats gone, everyone celebrates. Tanya gives up her career as a singer, Miss Kitty falls for Tiger, and Feivel begins to notice Wiley walking into the sunset and follows him. After stopping to rest, Wiley hands Feivel a sheriff badge, signifying his retirement, and tells him that even though the battle is won, Feivel's journey is far from over. While this movie is far from what Don Bluth's classic film was, being more comical than its predecessor, I do think that the film does have its own strengths and weaknesses. The film does tend to get ahead of itself a bit too often, and has a lack of focus with 3 contrasting plots. The journey to go west, Tanya wanting to be a singer, and Tiger following the train. The acting is very good, especially John Cleese's performance as Caterwaul. But I feel like the characterizations are a bit too predictable. You're gonna know who's the villain and who's the good guy here. Its biggest weakness, however, is the fact that there's a bunch of missing context to what's going on, such as Feivel being obsessed with the Wild West. I feel like there could have been a whole nother film to explain a lot of the plot points in this movie. One of the film's biggest strengths, however, is the use of camera movement, such as the scene where Five was being carried by the hawk. There is also a bunch of shots with impressive lighting effects. Honestly, despite being an early sequel, as it falls flat from what we have nowadays, where studios are careful to make sure that the sequel is actually worth seeing, rather than just being a cash grab. It definitely tries to be more creatively bolder than its predecessor, even though the emotional punch of the original is not present. Plus, we have James Stewart, the star of It's a Wonderful Life, in his final role, which makes the dialogue of his character, Wiley Bub, at the end of the movie a lot more meaningful as he's passing the torch down to a new generation of actors. At least that's how I interpreted it. I do want to point out that the film is full of Western tropes. Not just the music, but a bunch of other cliches that could make the plot a bit more outdated by today's standards. This includes gun violence, especially in the opening sequence, saloon girls that may come across as sexist, and of course, the offensive depiction of indigenous tribes. In this case, they are depicted as savage, bloodthirsty warmongers who live in teepees or sotik, meaning that they don't convey much emotion other than looking serious. And they are superstitious as they mistake tiger for a god based on a mountainside that resides near their village. All in all, I think this movie is worth a watch. Just be aware that there is some material that probably wouldn't fly on today's market. In short, I would recommend this film to those who are into early sequels that were in theaters, but not to those who are fans of the original American Tale. Our next topic will be the Rugrats episode, The Wild Wild West. The episode begins with Grandpa Stu telling the babies Western stories. Meanwhile, Angelica finds some left behind coupons for free ice cream lying on the ground and decides to keep them for herself. This leads to her being chased by Tommy, Chucky, and Susie while pretending they're in the Wild West. During the chase, the trio find Bill and Lil taking on the persona of Native Americans who help them across a river using a canoe. They also chase Angelica through some woods, up a mountain, into Angelica's hideout, but get caught. Thankfully, Phil and Lil arrive with backup, and they convince Angelica to apologize and share the coupons with everyone. While I do criticize the fact that they chose to use Caucasian characters as the Native Americans, I do like one comment that was made in the episode. Chucky thinks that the Native Americans might be scary, but Tommy reassures him that they're friends. I think this shows that indigenous people should not be feared but instead befriended. My biggest takeaway from this episode, however, is how they were able to balance make believe with the real world, as it constantly switches back and forth between how the babies are imagining their adventure with what's actually happening. And I would recommend this episode to those who are fans of that kind of stuff, where you get to see what's going on inside the character's head, while also getting to see what's actually happening. Just be aware that while this is an improvement over An American Tale 5 Goes West, the fact that they chose Caucasian characters to play indigenous characters in this scenario probably wouldn't be seen as okay on today's market. last topic will be the Fairly Odd Parents episode, Odd West. The episode begins with Timmy and the Squirrely Scouts being led by his dad, going to his childhood place, Dimsdale Flats, an old western town that has been long abandoned. No sooner do they arrive, however, they see that Doug Dimmadome, founder and owner of the Dimsdale Dimmadome, wants to bulldoze the town and build a mini-mall over it on account of the deed being lost to time. But despite standing up for Timmy's dad, as it states in the manual that the scouts need to stand up for their scoutmaster, Doug throws them all in jail. And because Cosmo and Wanda cannot wish up the deed, Timmy decides to go to the Old West to look for it. Shortly after encountering the ancestors of Timmy's friends Chester and AJ, they learn that the local criminal, Vicky the Kid, who happens to be Vicky's ancestor, has the deed to the town. In order to retrieve it, Timmy takes on the persona of the Masked Stranger, which is obviously a parody of the Lone Ranger. To complete the reference, Wanda takes on the persona of the Native American sidekick Dancing with Wands, which is not only a reference to the film Dances with Wolves, but the role she takes on is a reference to Tonto, which, unfortunately, the name translates to dumb. And finally, there's the trusty steed, Cosmo. Get it? Because he's a cow? Anyway, what commences is what could be perhaps the most epic duel of rock, paper, scissors. And with Timmy's mad skills and a little help from Wanda, he obtains the deed from Vicky the Kid. After returning to the present and finding out that the scouts had managed to dig themselves out of prison, Timmy reveals that he hid the deed in an old manual. And since nobody reads the manual anymore, even at that time, it explains why no one was able to find it. Timmy then gives the deed to his dad, making him the owner of the town. But Doug is able to bribe him out of it. However, the sad ending becomes more bittersweet as Timmy is given an Make My Dad Richer badge. It's really a shelf badge with the word shelf crossed off. But it's the thought that counts, I guess. While I did think this was a pretty good episode, I do want to point out that in addition to what was stated before about Wanda's Tonto-like character in The Lone Ranger, like the Rugrats episode we discussed earlier, it involves a Caucasian character pretending to be a race that he or she is not. This kind of writing for a show would not be acceptable in today's market for sure. It was wrong then and it's still wrong today. It actually surprises me that recently the Nickelodeon YouTube channel was able to put this episode on without any problems. So if you do decide to watch this episode, which I probably would not fully recommend, just be aware that some of the jokes would not fly in today's atmosphere. Thanks for tuning in to Critimation. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter, or support me on Patreon. I'm open to suggestions, and I will see you next time.